At my mom's 50th birthday, I surprised the entire family with first-class tickets to Paris. My dad laughed and said, "It's only family when you're not there," and they all joined in laughing. I nodded, smiled, and quietly left the party. 3 days later at the airport, they tried to check in but discovered their flights had been mysteriously cancelled due to payment issues. Complete chaos broke loose as they scrambled with crying kids and heavy luggage. That's when I posted a photo from the Eiffel Tower with the caption, "Paris is beautiful when it's just family." My phone exploded with calls and texts, "This is cruel. We were just joking. Please call the airline." I replied to the group chat, "Don't worry, I'm having enough fun for the whole family." Now my mom is blowing up my phone, crying that they didn't mean it and begging me to book them new tickets. You know that moment when everything clicks into place? When months of planning suddenly pay off in the most unexpected way? Well, let me tell you about the sweetest revenge I've ever served, and trust me, it was worth every penny. Picture this. I'm standing at the Eiffel Tower at sunset, phone in hand, watching my family group chat explode with panicked messages. "Henry, the tickets aren't working. The airline says payment issues. What's happening?" But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need the whole story to understand why this moment felt so perfect. 3 days earlier, I walked into my mom's 50th birthday party carrying what I thought was the surprise of a lifetime. Rose Sterling had been dreaming about Paris since she was 12. I'd heard the story 100 times. So I'd spent 2 years saving every spare dollar to make it happen. 4 first-class tickets. 5-star hotel. The works. The party was typical Sterling family chaos. My sister Clara was there with her husband Hugo and their twin boys, Leo and Charlie. My younger brother Oscar brought his wife Hazel. Everyone laughing, sharing stories, making mom feel special. I waited for the perfect moment. You know how timing is everything with surprises, right? After mom blew out her candles, I stepped forward with the envelope. "Mom, I have something special for you." The room went quiet as she opened it. I watched her face transform as she read, "First-class flights to Paris. 7 days at the Hotel Plaza Athénée. Tours, wine tastings, everything she'd ever dreamed of." "Oh my goodness, Henry," she whispered, tears forming. "This is incredible." That should have been my moment. The son who finally delivered the perfect gift. The moment I'd been working toward for 2 years. But then my dad, Arthur Sterling, cleared his throat with that fake authority he'd perfected over decades. "Well," he said, "this is certainly generous. But you know what they say about family trips. I should have seen it coming. Should have recognized the setup. It's only family when you're not there." Have you ever felt your heart actually break? Not metaphorically, but that physical sensation of something vital snapping inside your chest? That's what happened as the entire room erupted in laughter. Clara laughed first, that sharp sound she'd mastered in high school. Hugo joined in, then Oscar and Hazel. Even the twins giggled, though they didn't understand why. And Mom? The woman I'd spent 2 years saving for? She looked around the room and smiled. Not the uncomfortable smile of someone caught in awkwardness. The genuine smile of someone who found it amusing. "Oh, Arthur," she said through her laughter, "you're terrible." Terrible. Not wrong. Just terrible. I did what I always did. Smiled. Nodded. Played the good sport. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Enjoy Paris." And I left. Walked out of my mother's 50th birthday party while they were still chuckling about their family joke. The drive home was a blur of memories. 28 years of being the reliable one. The helper. The backup plan. Every family gathering where I was the afterthought. Every holiday where my achievements got glossed over while Clara's latest promotion earned applause. You might wonder, was I overreacting? Was it just a harmless joke? Let me tell you about Christmas 2 years ago. Clara had volunteered to host Christmas dinner. Big production, she loved playing the perfect hostess. But 3 days before, she called in panic. The caterer had cancelled. "Henry, I know this is last minute, but could you possibly cook the turkey? I'll reimburse you for groceries." I spent 2 days preparing everything. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce from scratch, homemade rolls. Arrived at 6 a.m. to start cooking in her kitchen. The dinner was perfect. Everyone raved about the food. Arthur made a toast about how wonderful it was to have such a talented daughter who could put together such an amazing feast. Clara didn't correct him. Just smiled and accepted praise for my work. When I mentioned I'd done the cooking, Oscar laughed. Henry's being modest. Clara's always been the chef in the family. I let it slide. I always let it slide. That night in my apartment, I realized that was the moment I should have spoken up. But I'd been trained from childhood to be grateful for inclusion, not to demand recognition. Sitting in my living room after the birthday disaster, I made a decision. Actually, several decisions. First, I called the airline. "I need to make changes to a booking," I said, reading the confirmation numbers. "Certainly, sir. What changes would you like to make?" "I'd like to cancel 4 of the 5 tickets. Hold them for 3 days before processing, please." 3 days. Just enough time for them to pack, arrange time off, build excitement. Just enough time for the kids to tell their friends about their fancy Paris vacation. Then I made another call. "I'd like to change my ticket to tomorrow morning." See, here's what they didn't know. I'd bought 5 tickets originally. 1 for each of them, and 1 for me. I'd planned to surprise them at the airport. But their joke had clarified something important. If it was only family when I wasn't there, I'd give them exactly what they wanted. The first-class flight to Paris was everything I'd dreamed. Warm croissants, real orange juice, a seat that became a bed. I spent the flight thinking about what they were probably doing back home. Packing. Making lists. Clara probably color-coding their itinerary. I checked into a charming hotel in Montmartre, not the Plaza Athénée I'd booked for them, but a boutique place with a view of Sacré-Cœur that took my breath away. That first morning, I did everything I'd planned to do with them. Walked along the Seine, visited street markets, sat in cafes watching Parisians hurry past with their effortless style. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. My phone buzzed. Text from Oscar, at the airport. "Flight's not showing up. Calling you." I let it ring. "Clara, Henry, there's an issue with our tickets. The airline says they were cancelled? Can you call them?" I ordered another coffee and watched a street artist paint portraits. Hugo's text was more direct. "Dude, we're stuck here with screaming kids and they're saying our tickets don't exist. What's going on?" That's when I posted the photo. Standing beneath the Eiffel Tower at sunset, golden light streaming through iron lattice, I took a selfie. Not staged or Instagram perfect, but genuine. The first real smile I'd felt in years. The caption was simple: "Paris is beautiful when it's just family." I posted it to our group chat and turned off notifications. Can you imagine the chaos erupting back home? 4 adults, 4 children under 10, mountains of luggage, standing in an airport with cancelled tickets and no explanation. I spent the next hour in the Louvre, standing before the Mona Lisa, wondering if she'd approve. Her enigmatic smile suggested she might. When I finally checked my phone, I had 47 missed calls and 83 messages. Arthur's voicemails progressed from confused to angry. "Son, there's been some misunderstanding," to "This is ridiculous. Call me back." Clara's messages were indignant. "This is crazy, Henry. The kids are crying. You can't just strand us here." Oscar tried guilt. "I know you're mad about Dad's joke, but this is too far." But it was my cousin Belle Rivers' text that made me pause. "Heard what happened? About time someone stood up to Uncle Arthur. Proud of you." Interesting. Apparently, other people had noticed the family dynamics I'd been blind to. That evening, while enjoying coq au vin at a restaurant my hotel concierge recommended, Mom called. "Henry?" Rose's voice was thick with tears. "Where are you?" "Paris." "How did you get there? What happened to our tickets?" "I cancelled them." Silence. Then, "Why would you do that?" "Because you laughed, Mom. When Dad said it was only family when I'm not there, you laughed." "We were just joking. Were you?" "When's my birthday, Mom?" "What does that have to do with?" "Simple question. When's my birthday?" "It's in July?" "September 15th. It was last month." No one called. The silence stretched across thousands of miles. "But you know Clara's birthday. May 20th. And Oscar's, December 3rd. Funny how you remember theirs but not mine." "Henry, we love you. I know you do. But love isn't the same as family, is it? At least, not according to Dad." The next morning, Clara called while I was sitting at a Latin Quarter cafe. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now fix this." "What point is that, Clara?" "That you're upset about a stupid joke." "Fine. We get it." Notice how she wasn't apologizing? Just commanding me to solve the problem I'd created. "Tell me," I said, watching a couple share pastries at the next table, "when you planned your wedding, how many times did you ask for my input? What does that have to do with anything?" "Humor me." "It was hectic. 0 times. But I was good enough to set up chairs and drive elderly relatives to the venue. Just not good enough to have opinions about flowers or music." Henry, that's not fair. And when Oscar was going through his divorce, how many family dinners centered around supporting him? He was going through a hard time. All of them. Every single one for 6 months. But when I lost my job last year, how long did it take anyone to notice? The silence told me everything. 3 weeks, Clara. 3 weeks for Mom to casually ask why I seemed down lately. Here's what I understood sitting in that Parisian cafe. I'd been funding my own exclusion for years. Every gathering where I brought expensive wine that went unacknowledged. Every holiday where I gave thoughtful gifts while receiving generic gift cards. Every birthday, graduation, anniversary where I showed up with enthusiasm and left feeling invisible. The Paris trip was supposed to be my grand gesture. Proof that I belonged. That I could provide something meaningful. Instead, it became the moment I realized I'd been trying to buy my way into a club that never intended to let me join. Oscar called next, his approach more manipulative. Look, I know you're hurt. But you know how Dad is. How is he, Oscar? He doesn't think before he speaks. 50 years of not thinking? That's quite a pattern. You're being dramatic. There it was. Not only was I not family, but my feelings about it were overblown. When you needed $12,000 for your custody lawyer, who did you call first? You, but when Clara needed someone to watch the twins for a week, who rearranged their entire schedule? You did, but when Mom needed surgery, who took 2 weeks off work to stay with her? Henry, we're grateful, but I'm still not family when I'm there. That afternoon, I visited Père Lachaise Cemetery. Strange vacation choice, maybe, but there's something peaceful about walking among graves of people who were once someone's everything. I found a quiet corner where an elderly woman tended flowers on a simple headstone. She looked up and smiled, patting the bench beside her. Famille? She asked, gesturing to the grave. Oui, I said in embarrassing French. Et vous? Mon mari. Cinquantaines. 50 years. She showed me photos, a young couple laughing, then decades later surrounded by children and grandchildren. Famille, she said again, pointing to all the faces. Not just the couple. Everyone. That's when it hit me. This stranger was showing me what family actually looked like. Not hierarchy where some mattered more than others, but simple, unconditional belonging. I posted another photo that evening, my dinner table for one, overlooking twinkling Paris lights, with the caption, having enough fun for the whole family. The responses were immediate and vicious. Clara, you're being selfish and cruel. Oscar, this isn't who you are. Arthur, when you're done with this childish behavior, we'll be here. Childish behavior. Selfish. Cruel. Isn't it funny how quickly people resort to name-calling when they can't control you anymore? What I didn't expect was how quickly the story spread. Small families, you know how they are, everyone knows everyone's business. My cousin Belle called while I was touring Sainte-Chapelle. Henry, I heard what happened. I think you're brilliant. What do you mean? Standing up to Uncle Arthur. It's about time. This was unexpected. You've noticed how they treat me? Honey, we've all seen it. At reunions, weddings. You're always cleaning up, helping out, making things run smoothly, and they act like you're invisible. She paused, and I could hear traffic in the background. Remember last summer's family barbecue? You spent 3 hours setting up tables, grilling food, organizing games for the kids. When people complimented the party, Aunt Clara said, "Oh, we just threw something together." Not Henry organized everything. Just we. The memory stung because it was so accurate. And Uncle Arthur's retirement party? You handled all the catering coordination, picked up the cake, even gave a speech about his achievements. But in all the thank you posts on social media afterward, you were mentioned once, as in thanks to everyone who helped. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because it wasn't our place. But honestly? Good for you. Some people need consequences. Belle's validation hit differently than family apologies. She had no stake in smoothing things over, no reason to lie to make me feel better. Belle, can I ask you something? Do other families work like this? No. In healthy families, when someone does something generous, everyone acknowledges it. When someone contributes, they get credit. When someone's hurting, people notice. So I'm not crazy for feeling invisible? Henry, you've been invisible for years. The crazy part is that you put up with it for so long. Over the next 2 days, more calls came. Apparently, Belle had mentioned my situation to other cousins, and word was spreading through the extended Sterling network like wildfire. My cousin George Rivers called while I was browsing bookshops in the Latin Quarter. Heard about the Paris situation. Had to call and say, finally. Someone stood up to that branch of the family. What do you mean, that branch? Henry, come on. Your immediate family has a reputation. They're lovely people individually, but together? They create this weird hierarchy where some opinions matter more than others. This was news to me. Other people have noticed? At weddings, funerals, reunions, we've all seen how they interact with you versus each other. It's like watching someone be perpetually relegated to junior status in their own family. George's wife Jane had apparently been keeping track. Jane says it's been painful to watch. She's mentioned it to me after every family gathering for the past 5 years. What does she say? That watching you try to earn approval from people who should give it freely is heartbreaking. She's wondered out loud why you don't just stop showing up to things where you're clearly not valued. The fact that extended family had been discussing this for years was both validating and mortifying. How many people had witnessed my pathetic attempts to belong? But the call that really opened my eyes came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Cooper, our elderly neighbor who'd lived next to my parents for 20 years. Somehow, she'd gotten my number through Mom's address book. Henry, dear, I heard about Rose's hospital scare. Is she all right? She's recovering well, Mrs. Cooper. Thank you for asking. Good, good. But I also heard about the situation that led to it. The cancelled trip and such. I braced myself for a lecture about family loyalty and forgiveness. I want you to know, she continued, that I think you did exactly the right thing. I'm sorry? Oh, my dear boy. Do you think I haven't noticed over the years? Every holiday, every family gathering, there you were in their driveway at dawn, unloading supplies. There you were at midnight, loading up leftover dishes and cleaning supplies. Mrs. Cooper had been watching. For 20 years. I've seen you arrive with your arms full and leave with your arms full, while everyone else shows up empty-handed and leaves the same way. I've seen you mowing their lawn, fixing their fence, helping them move furniture. She paused, and I could picture her shaking her head in her kitchen. But I've also seen the way they talk about you when you're not there. Not meanly, mind you, but dismissively. Like you're the hired help rather than their son and brother. They talk about me? Oh, yes. Last spring, when you were helping Arthur rebuild their deck, I heard Clara tell a neighbor, "Oh, Henry loves projects like this. He's always looking for ways to stay busy." As if you were doing it for your own entertainment rather than to help your father. Each observation felt like another piece of evidence in a case I'd been building unconsciously for years. Mrs. Cooper, can I ask you something? In your opinion, do they actually appreciate what I do? I think they take it for granted, dear. They've gotten so used to your reliability that they've forgotten it's a choice you make, not an obligation you owe. That conversation with Mrs. Cooper triggered a memory I'd buried so deep I'd almost forgotten it existed. My college graduation, 8 years ago. I was the first Sterling to graduate without family financial help, working 3 jobs, living on ramen and determination. When I walked across that stage, I felt like I'd conquered the world. The family celebration afterward should have been triumphant. But I remember sitting at the restaurant, listening to the conversation swirl around everything except my achievement. Clara dominated the discussion with stories about her latest promotion. Oscar entertained everyone with tales from his fraternity. Arthur held court about his latest fishing trip. When someone finally mentioned my graduation, Mom said, "We're so proud of Henry for being self-sufficient. He's never needed help from anyone." Self-sufficient. As if my independence was a personality trait rather than a necessity born from years of watching family resources flow to everyone but me. Some people are just naturally independent, Arthur had added. Henry's always been able to handle things on his own. At the time, I'd felt proud. Look at me, so capable, so strong. But sitting in that Parisian bookshop, I realized what they'd actually been saying: "We didn't help you because we didn't think you deserved help." The next morning, I was having breakfast at a sidewalk cafe when an American couple at the next table started arguing. Nothing dramatic, just the low-level bickering that happens when people are tired and stressed. "You never listen to my suggestions about restaurants," the woman was saying. "I listen," the man replied. "I just think I know this city better. You've been here twice. I've been researching this trip for months. But I have better instincts about these things." I found myself eavesdropping because their dynamic felt familiar. He wasn't being deliberately cruel, but he was systematically dismissing her input while positioning himself as the authority. The woman finally said, "You know what? Fine. You pick everything. But don't complain when you're doing all the work." And she pulled out her phone and started ignoring him. Watching this stranger's relationship implode over coffee and croissants, I saw my family dynamics played out in miniature. The subtle dismissals. The assumption that one person's judgment was inherently better than another's. The way someone could be marginalized not through cruelty, but through casual, consistent disregard. But I also saw something else, the woman's response. She didn't argue or plead for recognition. She simply withdrew her participation. That's exactly what I'd done, wasn't it? Withdrawn my participation from a system that didn't value my input. That afternoon, at the Musée d'Orsay, I struck up a conversation with a French woman about my age who was studying the same Monet painting I was admiring. American? She asked in accented English, noticing my obvious tourist status. Yes. Visiting from the States. Alone? By choice. She smiled. Ah, the best kind of traveling. I am Ivy Moreau. And you? Henry Sterling. We ended up having coffee at the museum cafe, and somehow, maybe it was the anonymity of talking to a stranger, maybe it was the romantic setting, I found myself telling her the whole story. The birthday party, the cancelled tickets, the family revelation. So you punished them by taking away something they didn't appreciate until it was gone? She summarized. I suppose, yes. This is very French, what you did. French? We have an expression, on ne sait connaît quand on l'a perdu. You only know what you have when you've lost it. Your family didn't value you because you were always available. So you became unavailable. Ivy studied my face with the directness I was learning was characteristically French. But now they are in Paris too, yes? So they came for you. They came because my mother was hospitalized. Perhaps. But they stayed to understand. This suggests they can learn, non? Her perspective was refreshing. To her, this wasn't a family dysfunction requiring therapy, it was a simple case of people taking each other for granted until circumstances forced clarity. What will you do when you return home? She asked. I've given them terms. Conditions for my continued participation. And if they don't meet these terms? I realized I hadn't fully considered that possibility. Then I suppose I'll know where I stand. Ah, but you already know where you stand. The question is where they will choose to stand with you. That evening, back at my hotel, I found an email from my high school friend Felix Knight. Apparently, the Sterling family drama had reached even my old social circle. Heard through the grapevine about your family situation, he wrote. Had to reach out because honestly, this doesn't surprise me at all. Remember senior year when your parents forgot your birthday? And you told us it was fine because they were dealing with Clara's college applications? I did remember. I'd made excuses for them even then. Or junior year when you couldn't go on the senior trip because you were working to save money, but Oscar got a car for his birthday the same month? We all thought it was weird, but you acted like it was normal. Felix's email continued for several paragraphs, cataloging moments from our teenage years that I'd forgotten or rationalized away. Patterns of treatment that had been visible to my friends even when they weren't clear to me. The point is, he concluded, your friends saw what was happening long before you did. We just figured it wasn't our place to say anything. But since you're finally addressing it, good for you, man. Sometimes people need to face consequences to understand impact. Even my high school friends had noticed. How many people had been watching me accept treatment I shouldn't have accepted? The most surprising call came from my colleague Pearl Brooks. We'd worked together for 3 years, but our relationship was strictly professional. Henry, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from HR because I heard about your family situation, and I wanted to share something. This was unexpected. What's that? Do you remember the company holiday party last year? You brought your sister Clara as your +1. I remembered. Clara had been visiting and I thought it would be nice to include her. I spent about 10 minutes talking to her about your work, telling her how much everyone respects you here, how you're considered one of our most reliable project managers. That's kind of you to say. Here's the thing, her response was weird. Instead of being proud or happy to hear good things about her brother, she seemed uncomfortable. Like she was hearing information that didn't fit her image of you. Pearl's observation hit me like cold water. What did she say? She kept deflecting. When I mentioned your promotion last year, she said, oh, Henry's always been ambitious. When I talked about the client presentation you aced, she said, he's good at talking to people. Everything I said got minimized or redirected. I see. But the weirdest part was at the end of our conversation. She asked if you talked about family at work. When I said you rarely mentioned personal life, she seemed relieved. Like she was glad your work colleagues didn't know much about your home situation. This painted a picture I hadn't considered. Clara wasn't just dismissive of my achievements within the family, she was actively working to prevent others from recognizing them. Pearl, why are you telling me this? Because when I heard about your Paris situation, it made me understand her behavior. She wasn't proud of having a successful brother. She was threatened by it. That night, unable to sleep, I walked through Paris alone. The city takes on a different character after midnight, quieter, more intimate, like it's revealing secrets it keeps hidden during tourist hours. I found myself at Notre Dame, or what remained of it after the fire. Even damaged, even under reconstruction, it was magnificent. Standing there in the shadow of something that had survived centuries of upheaval, I started thinking about resilience. How long had I been like this cathedral? Damaged by circumstances, but still standing? Still beautiful, still valuable, even if others couldn't see past the scaffolding of my attempts to earn their approval? My phone buzzed with another family message. This time from Hugo. Henry, I need to tell you something. After you left the birthday party, Clara spent an hour complaining about how dramatic you were being. But when we got home, she called her friend and spent 2 hours crying about how guilty she felt. Interesting. Public dismissal, private guilt. She's been doing this thing since you left, Hugo continued. Acting angry during the day, but I catch her looking at photos of you guys as kids. She found one from when you were maybe 7 and she was 10, you're holding her hand at some carnival, looking at her like she hung the moon. The image was vivid in my memory. Clara in a yellow sundress, me in shorts that were too big, both of us sticky with cotton candy and pure joy. She showed me the photo and said, he used to think I was the coolest person in the world. When did I stop deserving that? When indeed? When had my admiration for my big sister transformed into a desperate attempt to earn scraps of her approval? The next morning, I encountered a street artist near the Panthéon who was painting portraits for tourists. Something about his setup caught my attention. He had 2 easels going simultaneously, creating very different styles of the same subject. Which one is more accurate? I asked, looking at the 2 versions of the same woman. Both, he replied in heavily accented English. This one, he pointed to a realistic portrait, shows what she looks like. This one, he indicated a more interpretive piece, shows who she is. How do you decide which to paint? I ask what they want to see. Some people want truth. Some people want kindness. Some people want to be seen as they've never been seen before. He studied my face with the intensity of someone trained to see beyond surfaces. You have the face of someone who has been painted many times in the wrong style, he said. What do you mean? People see you as the realistic portrait, what you do, how you serve, your function. But no one has painted the interpretive version, who you are when no one is watching. His observation was so unexpectedly profound that I found myself asking, what would that painting look like? Ah, he smiled, that is what you are discovering, non? In this city, alone, you are painting yourself for the first time. Walking through the Marais district, I passed a wedding party posing for photos, and it triggered a memory I'd suppressed from Oscar's wedding 3 years ago. I'd been his best man, not because we were particularly close, but because who else would do it? I'd organized his bachelor party, coordinated with vendors, handled logistics while Oscar focused on enjoying his engagement. The morning of the wedding, while Oscar was getting ready, he'd had a panic attack. Cold feet, second thoughts, the works. I'd spent 2 hours talking him through his fears, reminding him why he loved Hazel, helping him find his confidence again. At the ceremony, I'd given a speech about brotherhood and loyalty and being there for each other through everything. Everyone had applauded. But here's what I remembered sitting on that Parisian bench, during the reception, when people asked Oscar about his best man speech, he'd said, Henry did fine. He's not much of a public speaker, but he tried his best. Did fine. Tried his best. I'd spent weeks crafting that speech, practicing in front of mirrors, researching quotes about marriage and family. And his summary was that I'd done fine despite not being much of a public speaker. The thing is, I'm actually quite good at public speaking. I give presentations at work regularly, had been class speaker at my own graduation. But Oscar had chosen to frame my wedding speech, one of the most important speeches I'd ever given, as a mediocre effort from someone with limited abilities. Why? Because acknowledging that I'd given an excellent speech would have meant acknowledging that I'd contributed something meaningful to his special day. At the Rodin Museum, an elderly security guard struck up a conversation during a quiet moment in the sculpture garden. You come here alone? He asked in careful English. Yes. Most people, they come with family, friends. You seem, how do you say, peaceful alone. I am peaceful alone. This is unusual for Americans, no? In my experience, Americans are always talking about family, about staying connected. I found myself explaining my situation to this stranger, this guard who spent his days watching people interact with art and each other. "Ah," he said when I finished. "You know what I see every day? People who stand in front of beautiful sculptures and instead of seeing the art, they see only what others think of the art. They look to their companions for approval before they allow themselves to appreciate beauty." He gestured toward a young couple arguing about which piece to photograph. "But you look at art and see art. You don't need permission to appreciate what moves you. What does that have to do with family?" Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Maybe your family has been so busy looking to each other for approval that they forgot to see you clearly. His English was limited, but his insight was crystal clear. That evening, I stopped at a small wine bar in Saint-Germain. The owner, a woman about my mother's age named Eve Parker, noticed I was dining alone and struck up a conversation during a quiet moment. "Business trip?" she asked, refilling my glass. "Family trip, actually. Sort of." I found myself telling her the story, "Why does crisis make us confide in strangers?" And she listened with the attention of someone who'd heard many stories across her bar. "Your family," she said when I finished, "they sound like people who mistake familiarity for intimacy. What's the difference? Familiarity is knowing someone's habits, their preferences, their routines. Intimacy is understanding their heart, their dreams, their fears." She wiped down the bar with practiced efficiency. "Your family knows that you're reliable, that you help with logistics, that you show up when needed. But do they know what makes you happy? What you worry about? What you hope for?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Do they know what kind of person you are when you're not being useful to them? The answer was painful in its simplicity. No. They didn't know me at all outside of my function in their lives. "This Paris trip," Eve continued, "is the first time you've been yourself without their expectations, yes?" "Yes." "And you like who you are when you're not performing for them?" It wasn't a question. Walking back to my hotel, I started thinking about gift-giving patterns in our family. Not just the obvious disparity in expense or thoughtfulness, but something more subtle. For Clara's last birthday, I'd given her a first-edition copy of her favorite childhood book that I'd tracked down through 3 different rare book dealers. It had taken months to find and cost more than I'd ever spent on a gift. Her thank you text, "Thanks for the book. So thoughtful." That same birthday, Oscar gave her a gift card to a spa chain. Her response, posted on social media, "My amazing brother knows exactly what I need. So lucky to have someone who gets me so well." The pattern was clear once I saw it. My elaborate, personal gifts were acknowledged politely and forgotten quickly. Generic gifts from others were celebrated as evidence of deep understanding and love. Why? Because acknowledging that I'd put thought and effort into understanding what would make her happy would mean acknowledging that I knew her well, that I cared enough to pay attention to her interests and preferences. It was easier to treat my gifts as obligation fulfilled rather than love expressed. Hazel called while I was sitting by the Seine, watching river traffic drift past like moving meditation. "Henry, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I wanted to talk to you without Oscar listening." "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about being treated like staff instead of family. And I realized I've been part of the problem." This was unexpected. Hazel had always been kind to me, never directly dismissive. "How so?" "Do you remember last year when we hosted Thanksgiving? I spent weeks planning the menu, decorating, preparing. And when guests complimented the dinner, I said, 'Thank you, we worked so hard on it.' That's normal. But Henry, you cooked half the meal. You brought 3 side dishes and helped me prep for 2 days. When I said we worked hard, I was including you in the effort but not in the credit." She was right. I'd been included in the labor but excluded from the recognition. It's like. She paused, searching for words. "It's like you're a ghost family member. Present for all the work, invisible for all the appreciation." Why do you think that is? Honestly? I think it's because you never demanded credit. You just gave and gave and gave, and we all got comfortable taking. It became easier to pretend your contributions were just part of the natural order rather than conscious choices you were making. Hazel's analysis was brutal in its accuracy. I'd trained them to take me for granted by never insisting on anything different. Around midnight Paris time, someone, I suspect it was Clara, based on the writing style, added a message to our family group chat that changed everything. "I can't sleep, so I'm just going to say this. Henry, if you're reading this, I need you to know something. I've been going through old photos since you left, and I found something that made me sick to my stomach." The message continued, "Do you know that in 5 years of family photos, you're almost never in the center? You're always on the edges, always slightly behind everyone else, always positioned like you're not quite part of the main group. She'd attached several photos as evidence. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, holiday gatherings. In every single one, I was there but somehow separate. Present but peripheral. I don't think we did this consciously, but looking at these photos, it's like we've been subtly communicating that you're not quite as important as everyone else. And the worst part? You went along with it. You positioned yourself on the edges because that's where we taught you to stand. The message was timestamped 3:47 a.m. Clara had been lying awake, tormented by photographic evidence of our family hierarchy. I'm sorry, Henry. I'm sorry for every photo where you're standing apart. I'm sorry for every time I let you fade into the background. And I'm sorry it took you leaving for me to see clearly. Reading that message in my Parisian hotel room, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. They were finally seeing what I'd been living with for years. My last day in Paris, I visited every place I'd originally planned to take them. The Louvre, Versailles, Montmartre. But instead of feeling sad about missed opportunities, I felt grateful for the clarity. I understood now that some experiences are more meaningful when you're not trying to manage other people's reactions to them. Some moments are more beautiful when you don't have to worry about whether everyone else is having fun. At the airport, waiting for my flight home, I wrote out my terms for family participation. Not demands or ultimatums, but boundaries. Clear expectations for how I wanted to be treated going forward. Because here's what Paris had taught me: respect isn't something you earn through service. It's something you require through boundaries. And love without respect isn't actually love at all, it's just comfortable exploitation dressed up in family language. The plane lifted off, carrying me home to people who were about to discover that the son and brother they'd taken for granted was finally ready to be seen. The call that almost broke my resolve came from 10-year-old Charlie. Uncle Henry? Mom says you're mad at us. My heart clenched. Whatever issues I had with adults, the kids were innocent. I'm not mad at you, buddy. Then why can't we go to Paris? How do you explain adult dysfunction to a child? Charlie, remember when Leo said you weren't a real gamer because you only played easy levels? That was mean. How did it make you feel? Sad. And mad. Like I didn't want to play with him anymore. That's what happened at Grandma's party. The grown-ups said something that made me feel like I didn't want to go on vacation with them. But we didn't say anything mean. And there it was. The innocent truth that almost made me crumble. You're right. You didn't do anything wrong. But sometimes when grown-ups hurt each other, everyone gets hurt. While arranging their consolation economy tickets for January, cold, rainy, miserable January, my phone rang. Unknown international number. Is this Henry Sterling? Yes. This is Dr. Marie Dubois from Hôpital Saint-Louis. We have you as emergency contact for Rose Sterling. She collapsed at the airport. Stress-induced cardiac episode. The world stopped. Is she okay? Stable, but she needs rest. She keeps asking for her son Henry. I was already grabbing my coat. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The taxi ride through Paris felt endless. All my anger, all my justified grievances, none of it mattered if Mom was lying in a hospital bed because of something I'd done. When I walked into her room, she looked so small connected to those monitors. But when she saw me, she said the words I'd waited my entire life to hear. I'm sorry, Henry. I'm so sorry. Not sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry for 28 years of making me feel invisible. I've been lying here thinking about everything you said, she continued. About Christmas dinner, about your graduation, about your birthday. You're right. We treated you like help instead of family. I sat beside her bed, feeling decades of resentment beginning to crack. Why was it different for me? Because you made it look easy. Clara needed help with everything: confidence, decisions, life. Oscar was always in trouble, needing rescue. But you just handled things. We started taking that for granted. I needed things too. I know that now. When you asked for help or attention and we dismissed it because you were strong enough, we were really saying you didn't matter as much. Finally. Someone acknowledging the truth I'd carried alone for decades. Within hours, the entire Sterling clan was on economy flights to Paris. Not the luxury vacation I'd planned, but desperate, expensive travel to see Rose in the hospital. Clara arrived first, looking haggard. When she saw me beside Mom's bed, her face cycled through confusion, relief, and something that might have been shame. How is she? Stable. She wants to talk to all of us. Oscar and Hazel arrived with all 4 kids, looking like travel disaster refugees. Arthur came last, And when he saw his wife looking fragile and exhausted, something in his face crumbled. "We need to talk," Mom said when everyone was gathered. All of us. The next day, we crowded into my hotel room. 8 adults and 4 children in a space designed for 2, but somehow it felt more like family than any gathering in years. "I failed one of my children," Rose began, gripping Arthur's hand. "For years, I told myself Henry was independent, that he didn't need attention like the rest of you. But independence isn't the same as not needing love." She looked at me directly. "You've been carrying this family for years, and instead of acknowledging that, we made you feel lucky to be included." Arthur cleared his throat. "Son, I want to apologize for the party. It was meant as a joke, but honestly, I think I was jealous." "Jealous? You became the man I hoped to be. Successful, generous, reliable. Instead of being proud, I resented that you made it look easy. So I diminished you to feel better about myself." Have you ever had someone explain hurtful behavior in a way that actually made sense? It doesn't excuse it, but it helps you understand it wasn't really about you. "My turn," Clara said, bouncing baby Leo. "Henry, I owe you 15 years of apologies." She took a shaky breath. "Remember high school when I told everyone you cheated on SATs because your scores were higher than mine?" I remembered. Months of whispers, suspicious looks, friends questioning my intelligence. "I made that up because I was embarrassed. You'd always been smart, but I was supposed to be the achiever. When you outperformed me without trying, I felt like you were showing me up just by existing." "It didn't stop there," she continued. "Every time you accomplished something, I minimized it. When you bought your house, I told people Dad helped with the down payment. When you got promoted, I said your company was desperate. The kids played quietly in the corner, building with hotel supplies, oblivious to the emotional surgery happening around them. I was afraid that if everyone saw how amazing you are, they'd realize I wasn't special." "Are we really doing complete family breakdown in a Paris hotel room?" Oscar asked, then caught himself. "Sorry, Mom." "Apparently," I said, and someone actually laughed with me instead of at me. "Fine. My confession, I've used you as my personal bank and therapist for years, telling myself it was okay because you never complained." He was right. During his divorce, he'd called me at 2 a.m. countless times. I'd always answered, always helped. When it was over, did I ever ask how all that crisis management affected your life? Did I wonder if you were okay? I didn't expect. But you should have been able to. That's what brothers do. Little Belle, Oscar's 4-year-old, looked up from her toy construction. "Why is everyone sad?" "We hurt Uncle Henry's feelings," Hazel explained. "We're trying to make it better." "Did you say sorry?" "We're working on it." Belle considered this seriously. "When I hurt Leo's feelings, I have to say sorry and do something nice. And I can't do the mean thing anymore." Out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes it takes a 4-year-old to cut through adult complexity. "What should we do to be nice to Uncle Henry?" Oscar asked. "Make him cake. And let him pick the movie. And don't laugh when he talks." "Don't laugh when he talks." She'd identified exactly what had been happening for years. "I have a question," I said, looking around the crowded room. "Do you actually want me in this family, or just the things I do for this family?" The silence was deafening. "Because I've been trying so hard to earn my place that I never considered whether I actually wanted to be here." Arthur looked stricken. "Of course we want you. Do you? Because it seems like you want the Henry who shows up with gifts and never complains. The Henry who cooks meals and doesn't ask for credit. But do you want the Henry who has opinions you might disagree with? Who might need support sometimes?" "Yes," Mom said firmly. "We do." "Then you'll have to prove it." "Here's what's going to change," I said. "You can still have your Paris vacation. I've rebooked you economy tickets for January. But when we get home, things will be different." I pulled out my phone where I'd been making notes. "First, no more automatic loans. If you need money, we'll treat it like business. Terms, interest, payment schedules." Oscar winced but nodded. "Second, no more automatic yes to babysitting or favors. I have a life too. Ask in advance, accept no as an answer. Third, if I contribute to something, I get acknowledged. If I cook, I get credit. If I help, it gets recognized. Fourth, I want to be included in planning, not just execution. My opinions matter." "And if we agree?" Arthur asked. "Then we try again. But these aren't negotiations. These are the terms of my participation." Flying back, them in economy, me in first class, felt less like punishment and more like symbol of changing dynamics. The real test would be home, where old patterns waited to reassert themselves. But something had shifted. Arthur didn't assume I'd handle luggage logistics. Clara asked if I wanted help. Oscar carried his own kids. Small changes, but you know how big transformations start with small shifts, right? 2 weeks later, we had our first family dinner since the birthday disaster. I almost didn't go. The old me would have automatically said yes and brought wine and sides. The new me asked what time, what to bring, whether Clara needed cooking help. Actually, Hugo and I have it covered. Just bring yourself. Just bring yourself. When had someone last said that to me? The dinner was different. Instead of me serving everyone, Clara had set up a buffet. Instead of conversation revolving around Clara's achievements or Oscar's drama, Arthur asked about my Paris experience. What was your favorite part? The independence. Making decisions without consulting anyone. Being myself. That sounds lonely, Mom said. It was the opposite. It was peaceful. The table went quiet. I'd been confusing being needed with being wanted for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be myself. The real proof came at Christmas. Instead of usual chaos where I handled logistics while everyone else enjoyed festivities, we planned together. Clara organized the menu, Oscar handled decorations, I coordinated schedules, Arthur managed gifts. For the first time in my adult life, I enjoyed Christmas dinner instead of serving it. The moment that proved things had changed came when little Belle spilled juice on Clara's white tablecloth. In old days, Clara would have stressed while I rushed to clean. This time, Clara shrugged. It's just a tablecloth. Belle, accidents happen. Henry, don't you dare get up. Hugo and I will handle it. And they did. While I sat and enjoyed my meal. This is nice, I said. What is? Mom asked. Being a guest at family dinner instead of staff. She squeezed my hand. You were never staff. We just forgot how to see you clearly. Later, helping Mom organize photos, I found something shocking, an album labeled Family Vacations 1998 to 2018. Page after page of trips I didn't remember. Disney World, beach houses, ski trips, photos of everyone else having fun. Where was I during these? Mom's face went pale. You were always invited, but you said you couldn't come. Because I was working. To pay for college. To be responsible. We should have insisted. Should have helped with expenses. But you didn't. We didn't. She closed the album gently. We let you sacrifice your youth to be responsible, then documented all the fun you missed. Looking at those photos was like reading the history of my exclusion. But instead of bitterness, I felt determination. We're going to fill a new album. 6 months later, we went back to Paris. All of us. This time, planned together, funded together, enjoyed together. Standing beneath the Eiffel Tower, the exact spot where I'd taken that defiant selfie, Clara said, Henry, will you take a family photo? Don't you want to? You're better with cameras. I want you in it. It's not a family photo without you. Complete reversal of everything before. As I handed my phone to a tourist and we gathered for the shot, Arthur put his arm around my shoulders. You know what I realized? What? It really is family when you're here. These days, family dinners are different. Messier, more honest. We argue sometimes, real arguments about real things, not polite disagreements I used to default to. The strangest part? I'm closer to them now than when I was trying so hard to earn their love. Turns out, relationships based on mutual respect are more satisfying than those based on service and obligation. Clara still makes lists, but includes me in planning. Oscar still calls in crisis, but also when he's happy. Arthur still tells bad jokes, but apologizes when he crosses lines. And Mom treats me like the son I always was instead of the employee I somehow became. Do I regret the Paris incident? It's complicated. I regret Mom's medical emergency. I regret the kids getting caught in adult dysfunction. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret forcing them to confront our family dynamics. And I definitely don't regret discovering I could be happy alone. Because here's what I learned, you can't love people into treating you better. You can't serve your way into belonging. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is stop enabling their worst behaviors. Sometimes walking away is the only way to show them what they stand to lose. And sometimes, if you're lucky and they're capable of growth, they'll realize they don't want to lose you after all. My phone buzzes as I finish this story. Family group chat, planning our next gathering. Clara, Henry, what weekend works for you? Oscar, should we do brunch or dinner? Henry knows the best places. Arthur, your mother and I would love to host, if that works for everyone. Mom, I miss you, sweetheart. When can we see you? Same words, completely different meaning. These aren't demands or guilt trips. They're invitations. Genuine desire for my company. They're treating me like family. Paris really is beautiful when it's just family. But it's even more beautiful when family includes everyone who belongs, not just people born into the right roles, but people who choose to show up with love, respect, and genuine care. These days, when someone asks about my family, I tell them about the people who learn to see me clearly. About the sister who asks my opinion. About the brother who calls to chat. About the father who tells jokes that bring us together. About the mother who understands that being strong doesn't mean you don't deserve support. I tell them about the family that almost lost each other at an airport, but found each other in a Paris hospital room. Sometimes the best revenge is giving people exactly what they say they want, and letting them discover they wanted something completely different. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming so genuinely happy that their opinion stops mattering. And sometimes, if you're incredibly fortunate, the best revenge is watching people who hurt you grow into the people you always hoped they could be. Because that's when you realize it was never really about revenge at all.